Watch the mine. Welcome to the Discover Alaska Lecture Series, brought to you by the University of Alaska's Summer Sessions and Lifelong Learning. My name is Althea St. Martin, and I'll be your host for this summer series. Summer Sessions again has a full lineup of free programs Monday through Thursday, every night at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow night, Thursday, is Music in the Garden. And yes, we are returning to Jorgensen Botanical Gardens, and we'll have the Fireweed Fiddlers with us. On Monday, June the 7th, the Author's Corner will feature Hard Driving, the 1908 auto race from New York to Paris, with author Dermot Cole. Should be an exciting one. And on Tuesday, Healthy Living Series is going to feature a very timely presentation by Dr. Angela Remus and Dr. Ann Zink on healthy living and resilience in a time of COVID. Each Wednesday night over the course of the summer, Discover Alaska will feature a local member speaking on a wide range of Alaskan topics. Next week, we'll hear from Tom Bunsen, and he's going to be honoring mining pioneers of the Yukon Gold Rush that were from Fairbanks. Discover Alaska is in its 16th season, and this year, the majority of programs will be held here in the BP Design Theater. It's located in the new engineering building on the UAF campus. It will also be live streamed and recorded. This allows us to take advantage of technology to a much wider audience. We're grateful to our speakers, and we really appreciate the time that they are donating to help us all learn more about this great state. Before I introduce tonight's speaker, I have a few housekeeping items. You can view and share all of the summer sessions lectures by going to UAF Summer Sessions website at uaf.edu/summer/events. Tonight, in addition to our in-person audience, our online viewers can type questions for the presenters into the link at the bottom of your screen or the chat box. And UAF's mask policy is you do not need to wear a mask if you are fully vaccinated. I'm truly delighted tonight to introduce the speaker, Pete Kelly, who will be sharing with us the wonderful resource that we have in Fairbanks, our rescue mission, and how this community has the means to take care of the less fortunate and to provide a path forward for them. Pete is the CEO of the Fairbanks Rescue Mission. He was born and raised here in Fairbanks, graduated from Liberty University. He has worked as the director of University of Alaska State Relations and was elected to the Alaska Legislature, serving as the Senate President. He and his wife own Alaska Venture Riders. His professional experience includes working as heavy equipment operator, a real estate agent, a radio sales manager, and the owner of Kelly Communications. It's my pleasure to welcome Pete Kelly.
Is the mic? Yes, I can hear it. Is it distorting or anything like that? We're good? Must be. All right. All right. So, Althea, I'm very excited to be here, and we were talking a little while ago about how long we've known each other. It's a pretty long time. I went to the legislature in 1995, and then I was there for a while and took about 10 years off, and then went back to the Senate, and just recently started as the CEO of the Rescue Mission, and I couldn't be happier. It's a fantastic job. It is the most exciting and diverse job I could ever imagine. I'll be sitting there figuring out budgets, and the next thing I know, 5 minutes later, I'm chest to chest with somebody that won't do what he needs to do, and a fight's about to break out or some security issue, and I never know what's going to hit us next. And we do everything from fundraising to leading people to Christ. We're a Christian organization, and we do services there. I do a movie night on Wednesday night for the ladies. That's kind of a hoot. Actually, Rick Soley, who he said he might be here. I'm sure many of you know Rick. He's at the rescue mission tonight. He and his wife were doing an ice cream social. Those are the kinds of things we do all the time there, and we make new friends, and we interact with people at the worst time in their lives. We generally see people, unfortunately, on their worst day. And I tell them, you know, they think they've hit bottom when they come to us, and I try to reassure them, no, you hit bottom when you made the decision to come here. But now you're already bouncing back, so you're a little bit up off that bottom. You know, as Althea said earlier, this community has the means to take care of so many needs for our fellow Fairbanksans. But I'm not really here to talk about homelessness, which might be on the venue. I'm not sure. Because homelessness is not anything that we can do anything about. Homelessness itself is not the problem. If homelessness were the problem, then you could get somebody housing and they would no longer be homeless, but that doesn't work. It helps. And many of the programs that get people housing who will find themselves in a homeless situation are very valuable programs. But the symptom is homelessness. It's not the disease. It's a symptom of something that's far greater, and it's more insidious than I think we're prepared to deal with at the mission. But we do have means to reach out to the people who are homeless in a way that is meaningful to them. We're a Christian organization, so the way we deal with things is as Christians. Number one is Jesus Christ. We're being the Christian organization, we follow a carpenter who lived 2,000 years ago, and by all accounts, he's still alive. That's our belief, and we try to deploy his life and his teachings as we help people. We don't do the thing like you see a lot in the movies where they have a rescue mission and you've got to go see a sermon before you can get something to eat. That didn't sound a lot like Jesus to us. It's like, you want this little snack here? You have to listen to me. He didn't operate that way. We try not to as well. What we do in our mission, mostly that as we deploy against homelessness and its wreckage, is that we strive for excellence within our organization. That's the best we can do to serve the people, our guests, and to be accountable to that carpenter that is so important to us. I'm going to start tonight, as I said, I'm not going to necessarily talk about homelessness yet. It's going to sound a lot like I am, because as I just said to you, it's a symptom. It's not the disease. But first of all, I want to talk about the numbers. So I see the little red dot, and if I hit the screen, shouldn't it change it? What am I aiming at, gentlemen? Oh, there it goes. It's a little delayed. Okay. All right. I'll fill in the time. So the numbers. Housing and Urban Development establishes the numbers on homelessness nationwide, and they derive the numbers of how many homeless people are out there through something called a point-in-time count. And people who are involved in shelters and different programs will go out literally on a certain day. And I think this year, I think it was February 26th, that date sticks in my mind. And they try to find how many homeless people are out there, and they'll count shelters, encampments. Sometimes they actually see people on the street and they'll count them, but they don't count people in cars. And so many people are living in their cars who are homeless. And there's no way to count couch surfers. And they make up a big number. And what the HUD found this year was that there were 580,000 homeless people that met their criteria in the United States, including 171,000 of those people who were in families. 100,000 of them were chronically homeless, and that's just defined in a number of ways, but mostly it's an unaccompanied single adult, and they have a diagnosable behavioral health issue like drug addiction or mental illness. They could be homeless for a solid year or 3 times over the last 4 years. So they've got a criteria for it, and it's up for debate about those numbers. But those are the numbers that we live by. Included in that 580,000 were 35,000 unaccompanied children. That's a really disturbing number to me. In shelter, transitional housing, and encampments, street people, and that's what they count. In Fairbanks, there were 197 people on that day that they found that were homeless. 123 informal shelters. That pretty much all of them, of that 123, would have been in ours. There are a couple other shelters that are not as extensive as the Fairbanks Rescue Mission. We have both women, children, and men, or all 3 women, children, and men in our shelter, and all the other ones either are for women or teenagers. The bridge is for young adults. There were 123 in the formal shelters. There were 20 in transitional housing and 54 unsheltered. I hope that number was only 54, because we were counting on a day that it was about 35 below. Yeah, that's just, when you think about our weather up here, it breaks my heart sometimes. And, we haven't had 50 below in the last couple of years, but we've all seen 50 below in this room. And can you imagine that? I mean, seriously, can you imagine being homeless and nowhere to go at 50 below? You're not going to make it, pretty much, unless you have incredible gear. And most of these folks don't have that great of gear. Some do, though. They live out there. It's remarkable to me, and I'm sure you've done it just as I have done it. You're driving along, it's colder than heck out, and you see someone who's obviously a street person. And I just think, oh, dude, how do you do that? And they manage. One of the big things that they fight is pneumonia, not necessarily just because they're cold and their immune systems are down, but a lot of them live in tents. And if you live in tent in that kind of weather, the particulates are ultimately going to get you, and you'll get pneumonia. If we go to the next one here. There you go. So it's not about numbers, really, when it comes down to it, though. We have to live and die by a lot of those numbers. It's about the people. And by the way, I don't know if you see that on this picture to the right of me, that's John Coghill. He, I'm sure all of you know John here. He works at the shelter now. Oh my gosh, what an asset. And it's so funny because John, when he was in the Senate, was such a polite, gentlemanly kind of guy, and he still is. But I didn't, when I worked with him in the Senate, I didn't see the tough side of John. And the guests do. They realize it's not a toughness there. Of course, there isn't a mean bone in John's body, but he holds people accountable. And they kind of struggled with him when he first went to work there, and now they just love him, and they come to him with their problems and like that. But he still holds them accountable, and you can be all chummy with John on one day, and the next day you've violated something. Maybe you've had some drugs on site or something like that, and out you go for the allotted period of time. But it's about people, and I don't. Let me see if I can see anyone up here. We try to keep everyone confidential. The people that are our guests confidential. But there was a story that really stuck with me this year. My daughter told us that she didn't want anything for Christmas, but that if we could give her some money, she was going to put together some baskets, baggy type things for homeless people, and then she was going to go out and find them and give them away on Christmas Eve. And it was a remarkable bag. It had socks in it. And she wrapped everyone up and put a little bow on it and toothpaste and all kinds of great stuff. And she didn't have that great of luck finding people, but she did find one. And she went to the transfer site out on the Cease Highway. And there was this woman writhing on the ground. And she had a real light jacket on. It was almost like a windbreaker. And so Katie went to her and wanted to see if she was okay. She ended up putting her up in a hotel for a couple of nights. But the great thing, and she didn't want to go to the shelter. That was and what I found out is that she had been kind of a regular at the shelter over time. Her life, she was never able to get her life together. And but Katie got her there, and then later on, she wandered into a church that happened to be the church where I go. And then we took her to breakfast, and she's at the mission now, and she's been out of the cold most of the winter. She was out of the cold, and we're hoping that she's making some decisions in her life that will defeat the homeless situation she finds herself in. But it's stories about her. I can't say her name. Let's call her Sally. But it's stories about Sally that really get to you. And we do see people over and over who are struggling in their lives in a way that is completely foreign to someone like me. I was raised in a great household. We were pretty, I mean, by today's standards, we were desperately poor. But we had a solid family. We were in a family with 7 kids and a mom and dad that were married for 50 some odd years. And these folks that show up there, most of them don't have that going for them. And most of them have made some pretty difficult choices in their lives that threw them deeper and deeper into their desperation. There's another person I want to talk about too, and it actually was a phone call that I got today of all times. So you have the woman who is writhing at the transfer site, who hasn't eaten in a long time. She's horribly cold and needs immediate attention. And then this fella came up years and years and years and years ago, and he decided he was going to drive his car to the Arctic Circle. Now, if he goes to the Arctic Circle, and he drives off the road, and then he walked to Livengood. He made it past the bridge, but he walked to Livengood and got a ride back into town. And he was from Texas, and he was stuck in Alaska in Fairbanks, and he had enough money. If he didn't eat anything or didn't have a roof over his head, he could afford the bus fare to get to Anchorage, which was his exit out back to Texas. And but if he spent any money here, he wouldn't have the bus fare, and then he'd be completely trapped. And he came upon the mission, and we put him up. It's obviously long before my time. We put him up, and it meant so much to him that little time in his life. I don't know the rest of the story that was going on with him, but it meant so much to him. He went back to Texas, and all these years later, he called me up today. He said, and he told me this story, and he said, I've got 9 lots in a little town called De Leon, Texas, and I want to give those lots to the rescue mission if you guys will take it. And I said, oh my gosh, yes, we'll take it. Believe me, we'll figure something out with those lots and how we can help fund the rescue mission. And I said, thank you very much. He said, no. He said, you guys, he said, I could talk to you all day, and I couldn't express to you how much it meant to us, or to me, to have that shelter at that period of time in my life. I don't know what I would have done otherwise, because I probably wouldn't have made it in Fairbanks. And had I made the wrong decision, I never would have gotten back to Anchorage. And he went on about that, and it was just so uplifting. And yet those stories, they happen, and you remember them and you feel good about them, but they don't happen often enough. So many of the people that are homeless are just chronically homeless, and they just never seem to get better. But the fact is that we do have successes. And most of all, we have the means. This community has the means to take care of homelessness and the immediate addressing of the needs for domestic violence and food. You look at the food bank, the rescue mission, and then the WISE Center for Families. And those are pretty big. That's a lot of infrastructure in a town this size. The rescue mission itself is about 40,000 square feet. It has all the rooms, and it has a game cutting room. It has freezers and refrigerators. It has a kitchen that most of the hotels in this town would die for. And then you look at the food bank, and I think everyone's pretty aware of the success of the food bank, also built by the Wise family. And then, as I said before, the domestic violence place across the street. All three of those buildings are about 40,000 square feet. And so we do have the means to deal with these problems. And we have, besides, I could go on so much about the Wise family, particularly Dennis Wise, who is the principal of the Wise family, and how much he has put into this community. But we also have a lot of partnerships. And we have partnerships with people that help us a lot with our operating budget. It's the Wise family that has been most visible in dealing with the capital issues, the building itself and remodeling and the maintenance on it. We do the maintenance. But there's the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority. They have given us a grant that we have run through the rescue mission for housing, rapid rehousing. It's called My Place. We have a contract with them to run it. It has 3 years. We've gone through the 3 years, and it's going to end next year. Not exactly sure what we're going to do about that. The Veterans Administration, we run a program for the Veterans Administration. The Hospital Foundation, they have been such a partner for us. And with the hospital, what they did for us in dealing with the virus was phenomenal. But let's forget that for a moment. That ambulance comes to the rescue mission a lot. We have a lot of people who have health, they run smack dab into health issues while they're there. They get injured. They have people with I'm stuck for the word for when people get hyperventilate and they panic attacks. They get panic attacks so bad that you can't tell the difference between that and a heart attack. So off they go in the ambulance, and they have just been fantastic for us. And when we call up sometimes out of nowhere, late at night to get advice on someone with a mental health issue, they respond instantly. I have a story about a woman. This one, again, it was early when I got there, but it was early after I got there in the fall, and then in about the middle of the winter when it started getting really cold. It was about 30 below, 25 below, and there was a woman who was there who had a profound mental health issue. And we're not equipped to deal with mental health issues at the mission, but we do the best we can. And we're probably dealing with a lot at any given time, that if you were a psychiatrist or something, they would probably tell us you shouldn't be dealing with these people, you're dealing with it too much, and that they need a higher level of care. We have no argument with that, but we just have to deal with people as they come to us sometimes. And then as we work with them, we figure, well, this one has to go to the fourth floor or something like that. And of course, the hospital is always on board to help us with that. But we had this one woman who was COVID positive, and she had mental health issues. And we had tried to isolate her, and she simply would not isolate. And not only did she not want to isolate, she was being belligerent to the other people, the other women on the women's side of the shelter. And so my first response was, how are we going to get this woman to stay in her room? And I thought, I had this brilliant idea. I said, does she smoke? And yes, she does. And she'd been smoking butts. And I said, go buy her find out what her favorite packet cigarettes is, and go get that for her so we can keep her in her room, because otherwise she's going to spread that virus. And the worst thing that's going to happen is, for what we see is most of the people that did get the virus didn't get sick. But the worst thing that's going to happen is we have all these women there that maybe would go back to very unhealthy, unsafe situations because they just couldn't deal with this woman anymore because they didn't want to get sick. And so we ran the risk of losing a dozen or so of the women that were in the shelter to the 35 below that was going on out there, or the boyfriend that was beating them, or the husband, versus this one woman. And we could, she didn't go out. she smoked the cigarettes and that worked for about a half hour, and then that wasn't working. So we called up the hospital and said, well, I don't know what to do with this woman, and we need her to be committed. That's not an easy process. And it starts with a mental health assessment by a doctor. And so Dr. Simon, who I think I mentioned before, he said, well, we'll send an ambulance over there if she'll come with us, but we can't force her to go. And unfortunately, she left off into the cold. And it's funny, I was working with Ann Zink, the state virologist, and I called up the Department of Health in Juneau and I said, okay, you have a COVID positive woman in a mental health breakdown riding the buses of Fairbanks. So if you're trying to stop this virus, you probably need to know about her. We never did find her. I'm sure she found some safe harbor somewhere. They often have places to go that of course we don't know about. But I just remember that decision that I was being forced to make is to send somebody potentially to their death, because we simply had run out of options and we didn't know how else to deal with it. And so we run into those things from time to time, and the partners at the hospital, I've gone on quite a bit about them. They have been great for that. There's the thing called the Homeless Coalition. It is a grouping of many people who deal with homelessness and related issues. And they come together and they are very active in something called coordinated care, so that people from many different areas that would come to different agencies or people become aware of, either at hospitals or churches or whatever, can find people that need housing and get them into some kind of housing, whether it's the shelter or actually you can get to an apartment or something like that. We have, of course, donors and churches, and the donors in this town have just been fantastic. They have really stepped up for us, and we're so grateful, particularly during the virus. The next, speaking of the virus, there it goes. We had the protocols in place right after I got there. It hit with the second wave hit, and we just started hand washing and washing surfaces. We have people that earn their keep there. If you come to the mission, it's free, and but at a certain point you need to start paying, and if you don't have money, that's okay, but we do need to do some things to help with the mission. And we've had people that were constantly washing surfaces and doorknobs and those kinds of things. And we realized that whatever happened with this virus, we had to have testing or we wouldn't be able to beat it, and we just didn't stand a chance unless we knew what we were dealing with. So we called up public health, and they said, look, we have to be a testing site. We need boxes and boxes of these things. We've got people coming here. We're going to have, near 1,000 people will come in through our doors this year. And we have to have testing or this fight is absurd. They gave us the test. The virology lab stepped forward and said they would do our tests for free. Dr. Simon, once again, said he would sign off on the testing. He did. And what we would do is everyone that would come into the facility, number one, you had to be tested. Then if you, as you were waiting for your test to come back, we put you in a segregated area. If you came back negative, you went into the general population, but if you came back positive, then we could put you in isolation. Likewise, we could also do a little bit of in-house contact tracing, because if you were in segregation, then we knew the people that you were in there with, and we could put those people in quarantine. And then we would continue to test. And as a result, I'm very, very proud of these numbers. 663 tests, and we had 26 positives. So whatever we did, it worked. And when you compare what happened at the mission with other congregate living facilities, it's miraculous. There was the big outbreak in Anchorage at St. Francis. There was the Pioneer Home, FCC, other places like that, and that goes back to that carpenter that we mentioned at the beginning of the talk, and he was obviously looking over us. Housing doesn't cure homelessness. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning. Programs don't cure homelessness either. Homelessness, as we said, is a symptom. The disease is far more insidious and more difficult to deal with. Having said that, the programs don't work. They do it at some level. We have plenty of programs. We have a program that we call 30, 60, 90, and what it is, it's an accountability program. If you come to us in 30 days, we expect you to do about 4 things. If you don't have a driver's license, it's going to be difficult to get a job. So you got to get your driver's license, your birth certificate, all those kinds of things that are a barrier between you and some kind of productive employment. We're going to deal with in those first 30 days, and we're going to keep it to a small number of things so that people can have a sense of accomplishment. After that, there's going to be a longer list if you want to stay for 60 days, and there's going to be even a longer list for 90 days. In that period of time, you'll also have a case manager. All of us do case management. I have about 3 people that I work as a case manager for, and we just try to run them through accountability. It's, if you need something, you have to work for it. If you're going to work for it, it'll probably come to pass, and that'll be a success you can put under your belt, and then we'll go on to the next thing. And pretty soon we'll help you as case managers come to the point where you can look at your life and say, hey, I'm kind of succeeding now. I think I can do something, and then we'll try to help them get jobs as well. We have a thing there called that's a 30, 60, 90 program. We also have something we call the green collar program. It is, we do all the recycling for the borough. And so we have people that work there, and we teach them how to run a forklift and how to run a baler. But also we built a classroom there, and we have soft skills classes for how to be on time, how not to get ticked off when your boss asks you to do something as outrageous as, hey, would you sweep the floor? Because a lot of these people have spent their life walking off the job in a huff because someone actually asked them to do something. Yeah, we have to find a way to get over that, obviously. Courtesy, those kinds of things. And we have those every Thursday, and the people that are working in the different programs come there, and we run through tapes and videos and try to teach them those kinds of things, but also some of the harder skills, which most of us would take for granted. But how do you read a tape measure? Well, it's surprising how many people don't know how to read a tape measure. Here's a socket set. This is how you work a socket set. Excuse me. And we can help them get directed towards like getting a GED and getting their finances in order, as small as they may be. And a lot of people that are at the shelter surprisingly do have jobs. And they go to them every day faithfully, but they're at the really bottom end, and it takes a bit of money to live in this town. It takes a bit of money to live anywhere in the United States, and some of them just work it out at the mission as best they can. I have a lot of respect for those people. The idea is we're trying to move them to productive independence. That, and we do it through accountability. There's a lot on this list. I would say 30, 60, 90 program, green collar program, enterprise program, Genesis program, My Place. And yet I have, one of the things the board of directors tasked me with is cutting back so that we're a shelter. We're not trying to be all things to all people. You know what happens when you go laterally, you're just not doing things doing your core mission as well as you could. So recently we have cut back on some of these programs. The Genesis program, which was a drug rehabilitation program of sorts. It just dawned on me that we weren't really qualified to do that, and we weren't seeing great results from that program either. So we just recently eliminated that. We were running the Twin Bears camp. It was hopefully to be a source of income for us, and it just really wasn't doing that well. Everybody thought it was great that we had this camp, but it was stretching us kind of thin. My Place, which is a pretty successful program. It's through the Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority, and it pays people's first couple months rent. It gets them, actually will take them through 6 months rent. It'll give them a little bit of money for some sheets and pillowcases and a little set of dishes or something like that, so that they can start with housing at some level. And we work with multiple landlords in Fairbanks. And we're getting rid of that, getting rid of it actually as a soft handoff to community mental health, community behavioral health. Is going to take that over, because as I said earlier, it's a 3-year program. They gave us an extension for a year because of the virus, and we would have this program, and it's a $250,000 program. And believe me, there's no room in the rescue missions budget to just start up a $250,000 program. So we have to hand it off to someone else. And it's going quite well. There's no controversy or anything like that. The woman who runs the program has given us very high marks, and we want that program to continue. We hope that someone else can continue it and has the money to do it, because it has been pretty valuable. But as I said, we're trying to release ourselves of many of these programs that are ancillary to our core mission, which is get people out of that cold weather, get them in where they can get a hot meal, get them in where we can talk to them and do a couple of things about the life they're leading. How can we help them? You know, there's a tremendous amount of danger being a homeless person. I talked a little bit about the woman that we had at that my daughter found at the transfer site, kind of on her last legs. That woman, unfortunately, too, I think about her a lot, because she has a lot of health issues, and the life that she's leading is, she's pretty young, but I honestly don't know if she's going to make it. And we see those people coming through constantly that live this very dangerous lifestyle. They're exposed to the elements, they're exposed to other homeless people who sometimes are not the nicest people, and they prey on each other. There are other people that prey on the homeless. And as the temperature goes down, it gets worse. Imagine yourself a 18-year-old, beautiful young woman with a child, and you're a couch surfer, and everything's going on just fine until it hits about 30 below. And all of a sudden your host, who's your friend, who's going to help you, starts making some demands. And as the temperature goes down, the demands get higher. Ask yourself, what would you do if you were a woman and you had to protect your child from 50 below? Answer, you'd do anything. And that's unfortunately the situation they find themselves in. We hopefully are a safe haven for many of them. A lot of them don't want to come there because of the stigma. There are people in this town who actually run things they call shelter for women, and that's exactly what the purpose is, to prey on them sexually. And when we become aware of them, we report them to the authorities. And some of there are very few, but one in particular that's a legitimate organization. I'm not going to say who it is right now, but they've had some of those issues as well, and they've been reported, and they're being watched. But it is particularly difficult for women to be homeless, because they are such easy prey, and particularly if they have kids, because they have to protect those kids. That's just the instinct of human beings, is to protect their children. And we try to help them when they come there. They're a mess by the time they get to us, and we just love them. So all we can do is give them some food, give them some warmth, tell them about Jesus, because there is a better way in this life, and they need to know it. Most of them have rejected that. But if you tell the story of a woman, if any of you have heard the radio ads that I did, I talk about this woman, Abby. That's AKA Abby, to keep her privacy, but young woman that was in Highland prison for a pretty minor thing, and she was released, and they took her, when she got out, they took her in a van and went over to the parking lot across from Bean's Cafe in Anchorage, let her out in the middle of the winter, and have a nice day. And by the way, this is not a slam at the people who work at the prison, because a lot of them do some they go the extra mile a lot of times for people. But they didn't in this case. They just didn't know what to, they're just doing their job. Left her off at the Beans Cafe. There she is in Anchorage, 300 miles from Fairbanks, which is her home. And her support system in Fairbanks had kind of disintegrated while she was incarcerated. And she had no money, didn't have a cell phone, had nothing, and made her way back to Fairbanks somehow in the winter, gets here, and it was beginning to get cold. And she's pretty savvy. She had been this route before, and she knew exactly what was going to happen to her if she started couch surfing. And so she made the decision, you know what, I'm gonna live in a tent, by God. And so she gets a little tent, and she goes to this old guy who was savvy on these things, and said, well, how do you insulate a tent? And he told her the thing you have to really be careful of is pneumonia. You can insulate these things, but there's moisture is going to build up, and the particulates are eventually going to gather or accumulate in your lungs, and you're going to get pneumonia. So she was in this little tiny tent, about the size of 3 or 4 of those chairs, and in South Cushman. There was a lot in South Cushman. It's on 28th. Since the city has kind of broken that one up, she's out there, and that was in that really, really cold winter that we had 2 back. Remember, it never really got 50 below, but it was just stayed at 35 below. And so she's there for a while, and sure enough, she gets pneumonia, and she's got a pretty high fever, and she made it to the mission. Well, fortunately, she was on 28th because the mission's on 27th. And she came in there, and this young woman, Christelle, her picture was up there earlier. Christelle just went the extra mile. This kid that works for us, she at the time she was about 23 years old, and she recognized, you are sick, we're going to the hospital. She took her to the emergency room, and well, it just kind of chokes me up because this young woman that works for us is just so outstanding. She stayed with her all through the night, all through the next day, as her condition stabilized. She brought her back to the rescue mission, and she did what we all hope to do at the rescue mission, which is show the love of Jesus to these people. And it had a huge impact on this woman, and I know that because unfortunately she ended up back behind bars. She's a riot. I really enjoy talking to her. But I was a chaplain over at the FCC for a while, and I knew nothing about the rescue mission or anything. And I happened to run into this woman, and she told me this story, and about how sick she got, and she made it to, I don't even know if she mentioned the rescue mission. But so when I ended up at the rescue mission, I was telling this story about when I was a chaplain. There was this woman over at FCC, and she went in the tent, and Christelle said, I know her. Well, she was the young woman that was the hero of the story that Abby had told me. And Abby's going to probably be back, one of our guests there pretty soon when she gets out. I hope so, because she's good people, and she realizes, I truly believe she realizes that she's got to get her life straight, because remember, homelessness is a symptom. It's not the disease. And Abby has the disease that she's got to get cured, and we got to help her do that. And that's what we do. Path Forward, as I said, we're a Christian organization, and we recognize the dignity of our guests, because each person is made in the image of God. That's what we believe. And the people that come to us, they're hurting, and we're called by Jesus to serve them without distinction as to whether their problems are self-inflicted or they have fallen victim to some set of circumstance or other people. That's something that has been difficult for me to adjust to. But I get it now, and that is, these are just the people we serve. They've done it to themselves. Homelessness is mostly, not always, there are people that fall on hard times. I said that, remember that. But you know what? A lot of homelessness is because of immoral decisions. You start taking drugs, you get addicted to drugs. When you get addicted to drugs, you'll do anything for drugs. You'll do anything for drugs. Likewise, women have sex out of marriage. They get pregnant, they have a kid. Although all of a sudden their life is on a completely different track, it was an immoral decision. And they're stuck with the consequences of it. Or men, same thing. They have sex outside of marriage with a woman, they get her pregnant, and then they don't man up. They don't take care of their family. These are immoral decisions. It's easy to look from the outside and say to these people, what are you doing here? You know, you want something from us, but all you have to do is fix your life. Well, you have to overcome that, because number one, that carpenter, Jesus, he didn't deal with anybody like that. He took them as they were. And that's what we have to do. We're just not as good at it as he is. Anyway, so the thing that drives us more than anything else, if we have a mission statement, and frankly, I don't even know it. I've got a pretty good idea. If I had to take a test, I could probably get past it. Because what drives me and everybody I work with is a scripture. It's Matthew 25. And it's all the way down to Matthew 25 to about Matthew 25:31. And if anyone is familiar with the Bible, they've probably heard it, but I'm going to read it to you because it's worth reading. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. And then the King of glory will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. This is the one that gets me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." As I said, I was a chaplain for a while. Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or give you something to drink or visit you in prison?" And Jesus said, he will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you did for me." So when we look at those guests and we talk about this, so that we never forget it, we're going to be judged by how we treat those people that Jesus says are his brothers. But he takes it a step further, and it's where it gets supernatural. He says, not only are they my brothers, they are me. They are I. Sorry. Point is, we have to remember that who we're serving. We're serving his brothers, and we're serving him. And that is the mission statement of the Fairbanks Rescue Mission. And we refer to it all the time. And Althea, I'm looking at the clock, and so are you, because I think you said at about 10 till you wanted to start seeing if there were any questions.
Well, we're checking to see if there's any questions online. I'd like to ask anybody here if they have any questions. Yes, let me bring the microphone to you.
Yeah, Pete, first of all, I think, thank God you are, and the rescue mission exists and is doing what it can. It's just, I mean, that's an overwhelming responsibility and thing that you're up against there. But I was thinking about a statistic. I think it was over at Jim Dodson's shop there, Fedco, one time, and it was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was the percentage or the number of people in the state of Alaska who were under the poverty line, whatever that meant.
Right.
Was like 25%.
Right.
It's like 1 out of every 4. And I'm wondering how we as a community, we as a state can absorb what you're trying to do on a microscopic level, a very important
It is small, yeah.
level. How to do that with the kinds of I hate to say institutions, but things that we as a community can do to help others to help themselves.
Yeah. Well, when you look at this community in particular, and as I went through the slide that said the means, and we have so much to be grateful for to the Wise family. Unfortunately, almost all of the resources that we spend are to take care of people and not do what you're saying, 25%, if that's the number, that's a crazy high number. And
Kids and families.
yeah, sure. And the numbers changes over time because the definitions change. But nonetheless, it's too many. Nonetheless, it's too many. And I don't, all I know is that the results that we see from the people in this town who, and it's mostly money, reach into their wallets and give to places like the food bank, the rescue mission, the bridge, on and on. There are all kinds of places like that. It's pretty astounding. And I guess I don't have an answer to your question, because the problem that we see, well, a good problem, and it is a good problem to have, that My Place program. So they start things up, mental health board starts programs up, and they do it for 3 years, hoping they'll catch on, and then they'll be funded by the communities or the interested community, whether it's the place like Fairbanks or something, or just a community of interest. They hope that they will take that over, or that maybe the community, the city or the borough or something will pay for it. I'm not criticizing that a bit, but that's the problem with those kinds of programs that are born out of more out of politics than out of the need. I know people in here. I'm looking at you people. I've seen you've given. I know. I go through that list, and that's how you solve these problems is we have to give. If we're not giving even to the manner to where it hurts a little bit, because if all we're doing is giving as much as it is easy, we're never going to fix the problem. We have to go a little bit the extra mile. And I don't want to be somebody that's constantly fundraising, but guess what? I'm constantly fundraising. So by the way, go online, fairbanksrescuemission.org. And we're having a fundraiser, by the way, on the 17th. By the way, we're having a fundraiser on the 17th. Let me shift. I'm a little serious about that. Jay Ramrus, Bill Sladen, and Dave Durham over at Mount McKinley said, "Hey, let's do a fundraiser. We're sick of these masks, and they're coming off, and let's go back to being a community again." So Jay, extremely generous, and he puts on a really great fundraiser. The food is great, and he said, "We'll take care of all that." These three guys. So we're out selling tickets right now, getting people to buy a table, and we're gonna do the auction items and those kinds of things. But what we're finding is the generosity is just astounding. The number of people that have told me no when I've asked them if they would buy a table is shocking. I just wouldn't have expected it. So I just don't think it's government programs, because it's just more, all they're going to do is more about the symptoms. And what do you do about people getting addicted to drugs? It's going to affect so much, and we haven't seemed to find a way to have any impact on that in the governmental arena that I've seen anyway. Not a very encouraging answer. But
Yes, another question here.
It's a question and also a statement. Everything you said tonight, I relived my life. My brother was a long-time manic depressive, little town in Wisconsin. He did everything he wasn't homeless since we kept the home for him. But still, everybody in the community knew of him because he was crazy part of the time.
Right.
But the Lions Club provided a social gathering for him. They did an outstanding job of getting him into their club and taking care of him.
I'll be there.
I can't say anything better about the Lions Club. They're just great. So
Yeah,
talk to the Lions Club up here. Maybe they'll help you out.
I bet they would.
Thank you. How about other questions? Yes, Mike.
So Pete, a comment and then a couple of quick questions. One, the comment, like Don was saying, what you're doing is just fantastic. Into bridge from Senate president into real world on the boots on the ground is really, really amazing. And then I think what you said about your daughter Katie and putting somebody up for the house, and I think your brother Mike who who befriended someone down in Juneau, incredible stories and commitment. Couple of just very basic operational questions.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just tick them off real quickly. General budget, the size of the budget, general staffing, who's staffing, and then relative to the mission, is it to ultimately put someone to place someone in a job or to get them back on the street, or just give them a break for a while till they stabilize?
Well, it's going to be all three of those. The budget is about 2 million, but that's going to be 2.6 million. It's going to be a lot less than that because I have removed some of those programs. The budget for instance, with my place, it's a $250,000 budget item, but it doesn't cost us anything because we're reimbursed for all those expenses. But once the program goes away, then we have to come up with $250,000. So there's a number of those things in the budget. I would say that the budget that I would say is the real budget is probably about a $1.4 million, maybe $1.6 million. And staffing, I've just recently cleaned up staffing a little bit. We're down to about 23 or 24 now. I've got to add some people. One of the things that was very disturbing was for this is not a slam on any of the CEOs that came before me. This was just a kind of a 50-year modus operandi. They would leave the shelter at night, and just the people that were there, they would just leave them there and they wouldn't have staff. And one of the things that I was there, and that just, I remember that when I learned it, I'd been there for a while, you're working normal hours, and I was there, I've forgotten what I got called, some emergency. Oh, no, it was actually one of the nights that Rick and I were there doing the ladies movie night. And I was walking out and I realized, wait a minute, I didn't see anybody in there. I can't leave. And so we started staffing to cover all of those shifts. And so that staffing level is rising for those real functionaries, but many of the directors are gone, not because I cleaned house or anything like that, but we've found very equitable ways to separate as people move on to better opportunities, and we can then end that program without disrupting anyone's lives. So I think, so I answered the one question. I'm thinking the budget's going to be around 1.6 or something like that. Staffing is probably going to be under 30. And what we're trying to do is, the answer to all those questions was yes. Sometimes people just need a break, and they find themselves in difficult circumstances, and they'll avail themselves of our services and hospitality for a month or so. That happens. We have people that are just never going to leave there. There are our folks, and there's really, and many of those people are not there because of their own choices. They are there because they do have mental health issues, but they're not so debilitated that they need to be at the 4th floor or something like that. And then the other one was job placement. We do that on somewhat an informal basis. As I said, we all do case management for the people that we're trying to move to productive independence. So we're looking for opportunities. There's a new fellow there. He had worked at a really big shelter in Spokane. And this guy, he's great. His name's Curtis. And he, within weeks of being there, he's out finding jobs for these guys. He's going around during the day, knocking on doors at Bailey's Furniture and different places like that, and getting these guys placed. And he spots the people who actually want to work and actually make their life better. And he just goes out and does it. And we do that kind of, as I say, on an informal basis, because you're just going to do that as you can. Curtis has more time in his free life than some people do. And so he can do this, God bless him. But it's more informal than it is formal.
Okay, any other questions? Yes.
Make more a comment than a question, I think, Pete. I was really glad that you brought up the word stigma,
Mhm.
and that embracing people with love, I think, is the solution.
Mhm.
I totally agree. And the money in this town comes when we need it. We're all
That's
pretty
true,
generous in that way. But that embracing people with love and not painting someone with stigma is really difficult in our community. And I don't think we can solve that until we become real about that.
Mhm.
But thank you for having that be central to what you were speaking.
Well, I think you're right. And I mean, we're really linked as well to the prison community, and the stigma. The unfortunate thing, the way prosecution works is to to lay as many charges on somebody as you can. You know, I was joking with someone the other day that this guy was charged with everything but the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, and for a somewhat minor crime. And he, you know, the guy probably had it coming. He was a little bit of a troublemaker. But the fact is that for him to escape all those felonies that are going to follow him the rest of his life, that stigma just isn't going away. It does with us, because we, as what you said, we're trying to greet these people where they are with love. And mostly we become friends with these people. And I hate, you know, here I am using the word "these people." They're our friends. I don't know what else to call them, our friends. Yeah. And we're very deliberate about calling them guests. I correct somebody if they call somebody a client. They're guests. They're not a client. You know. So no, you're right. June, I don't know what to do about that. Though. Anything else? Okay.
Let's give Pete a big round of applause. What a wonderful program. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. See you guys.
And we'd also like to invite everyone, we do have a little social hour out here, and they're just setting it up now. So please stop by, visit, and have any suggestions for speakers that you'd like to see for next year. We're always open to that. So thank you, and drive careful.